Alright, welcome back. Now in the last video we set up our data model as we've seen here, and now let's actually go inside the report view and explore a little bit the calculate function in relation with other important functions like the all function as well as the all selected function, and what's the main difference between those two. At first, of course, I need to have a few measures, and the easiest and simplest one will be the total sales again. So I can refer to my orders table here. I select I want to create a new measure, and this measure will be simply the total sales. So let's go in here and we will calculate this kind of similar to what we've done before. So our total sales is equal to, and now I say simply this is the sum of my sales from the orders table, the sales column. Okay, quite easy, nothing special in here. I can press enter and we have created our first measure. So far so good and quite easy. Now let's actually visualize that. Let's go with the category in our case. I can tick the category just to show a table by default, and then I would like to see the sales figures. So I can tick my total sales, or I can drag this directly in here in the values. Both will work. If I drop it here, I can see the sales amount for each of my categories. And just to make this bigger on your screen, let me just go to the total section here, the value section here, and then I can make the text size, let's say, go with 15. Let's just see that should work actually for hopefully all of us. Okay, so far so good. Now we already know that in order to get the total sales, so basically ignoring the filter context, which is in this case the external filter context, which in our case is the category, we have the option to leverage the all function to do that. So we could say that for our, let's call them overall sales or total sales without any kind of filter. So let me right click on orders table, new measure, and I will go with the name overall sales, but of course you can name this whatever you want. So for the measure itself, let me tick this option and let's go here with overall sales is equal to, and we already know that we can leverage the calculate function. The calculate function needs an expression, which is in this case total sales. Now we've set up prior to that, and then we can give it a filter expression. And we know, we have seen this in the last model, then when we use the all function, the all function itself needs either a column or a complete table. And if we give it a table, then simply all the rows in this table get basically returned. So that means that all other filters get removed. Okay, here ignoring any filters that might have been applied. And this ignoring filters is referring again to the external filters in our case, which are coming from here, right? Directly from the visual we have. In this case, a table. So we can simply refer to the orders. And if we refer to the orders table, that means we keep the complete orders table and remove any kind of filters which are coming from this table. In this case, it's only the category, but also any other kind of columns, which we could use here in the visual for filtering, would also be ignored. Because we simply say we want to have the complete orders table and evaluate the total sales. So then we close parenthesis to actually create or close the calculate function. I can press enter and we can easily evaluate that. We can go in here and tick this option here, and then we would see here the total sales, which is 1.35 million, which is the total sales in the whole dataset. So we're ignoring the external filter context simply with the all function. And what I meant when I said was referring to the complete orders table here, that means that all filters from the orders table, so also if I tick as an instance, let's say I'd like to add here also the ship mode as an example, I can drag my ship mode inside the values here as well. But because it's coming from the same table, it doesn't matter here actually, because the overall sales will always be here, the 1.35 million. So the category is ignored as well as the ship mode. Everything is ignored which comes from this table. Okay, that's the idea behind that. So let me remove this one more time. I just wanted to show this to you. Okay, so what if we would like to create the percentage? We also can easily do this. We can simply divide the two measures. And by now we know that best practice, we can use the divide function for that. So I can right click on my orders table and say new measure. So there's the measure. And then I could say here for my measure, this will be the percent of total. Okay, so and then it's equal to, and now I simply say this is divide. The numerator will be our total sales, and the denominator will be, in this case, the total sales, what we had with the all function, which is referring to the overall sales, which I named it, okay? And you can specify an alternate result if you want. For me, I just skip that for now. Then I can press enter and evaluate this formula. And if I go to my table again and I tick the option here, percent of total, then I would see this as a percentage number. Of course, it would make sense to format this correctly. So I select it currently and I tick the percentage symbol here just to get a percentage number in here. Okay, so far so good. So that works fine. And I can see the amount of sales for cheese based on the total sales. So that's fine. And I can see 100%. But what if I like to actually now use an additional filter, like another external filter, but which comes from another visual? So all the filters, not only this one here, which is currently in the same visual, but also filters from another visual, are external filters. What I mean by that is if I, for instance, go with my region, I can tick the region option here. And I like to make this a slicer. And I also like to increase the size a little bit. So go with items here and say also here for the text size, I go with 15. Okay, 15. Here we go. So that's fine. I can make this smaller here. That's my region slicer. And let me just drag this maybe down there. Now, let's actually also create a card here. Select the card. And here also add the total sales. Just an example, we have another visual, which simply shows the total sales amount, which is 1.35 million, which is the same value as here, right? The total sales. So far, so good. Now, let's actually filter the data. Let's say I'd like to see the sales for America. I can take the region America and watch what happens. I see 526,000 in total for America. Okay. I can see this also here. The total sales is correctly filtered. That's what we would expect, right? But the overall sales is not filtered at all. So you see that because the region itself is coming from the same table, and because we use the all function to remove any kind of filtering from this table, so any external filter context, that is why even though we filter here with another visual, we still see the 1.35 million everywhere. So this hasn't changed, okay? And that means that if we want to calculate the percent of total, you see that now it's the filtered total sales for the region America based on the overall sales without any filter applied. And that is why you don't see the 100% there anymore, right? So what can we do about that? I mean, if that's the behavior you want, then you're good to go. But if you don't want this behavior, instead you would like to see, actually, if you apply another filter from another visual, like the region here, for instance, you would like to see a filter of the overall sales based on the region, so that the percentage, again, would add up to 100%, because not only the total sales is filtered based on the region America, but also the overall sales is filtered based on America. Ignoring still the categories, right? That's what we want to have. How can we do this? Well, we just need to slightly modify our overall sales formula, which we have here. Because of, instead of using all, there's also a function which is called ALLSELECTED. And that's exactly what we need in order to solve our problem. So we can copy this formula here, Control-C to copy it. Then I go to the orders table, I right click here and say I'd like to create a new measure. And there's our measure. And then I paste it inside. And I simply name this overall sales, let's say, corrected. Okay, corrected. And as I said, feel free to come up with whatever name you want, a better name, hopefully. And I'm sure of that. So this is the overall sales corrected. Now I want to calculate my total sales. That's fine. But this time, as I said, I don't want to use all function because the all function ignores all external filter contexts, which gives us exactly the behavior we have here, right? So also ignoring here this region filter. But we want to apply the region filter. We just want to ignore the, in this case, what's coming from the table directly. So I want to ignore here the categories here, but still I want to see the data here for the total for the region America or Europe, depending on what I choose. So that is why I can say, instead of all, go in here, I'm using ALLSELECTED. Here we go. And you can tick this option, and here it tells you what it does. It returns all the rows in a table or all the values in a column, depending on whether you put in a table here, like we do here, or you put in a column, like orders and then a specific column name, could also be the case. But it actually here, ignoring any filters that might have been applied inside the query. So this is referring actually, in this case, to what we see in the visual, so in this case our categories, but keeping filters that come from outside. And you can think of it this way. So what's ignoring basically, everything inside the query is ignored. So basically this is coming from, in my case here, the different kinds of categories I have in the visual. But what's coming from outside, which actually is in our case the region filter which is applied here, this will be kept. Okay, this filter will still be applied. And let's actually take a look at that. Let's first go back to our new modified formula, correct it, and press enter. Just to create it. Okay, now there it is. Let me then remove the filter for now. Let's go back to our table, select it, and also add the overall sales corrected. Tick this option here. Now we can see we got exactly the same value here as we have for the overall sales. Exactly, that's exactly the same. So far so good. But now if we create an external filter context, right? The internal filter context, like here, the category is still ignored because we can see the same value here, the total sales. But now let's apply the other filter here, coming externally from another visual. Let's take the region America. I take this option here. And we see for the overall sales with the all function, we still get the total value. So this filter is ignored as well as this filter is ignored. But for the overall sales corrected, the category filter here, this is still ignored because it's within the query, it's inside the visual. But the external filter from another visual, which is coming from outside, as we've read in what the ALLSELECTED does, is actually taken into account. So the 526 is exactly the total sales, as you can see here as well, for the region America. And this is kept here. And that's the difference between the all function, which is ignoring everything, and the ALLSELECTED, which is ignoring, in our case, what's within the filter here in the visual, but still keeping filters which are applied from outside. And this allows us now, of course, also then create calculate the percentage of total as corrected values, right? So we can simply also say here it's now here. If I right click on my orders table, go to new measure and say percent of overall, let's call this here percent. Now we named it, the other one we named percent of total. Let's call it percent of total corrected. And again, I'm referring to the divide function, so divide. And for the divide, we need a numerator, which is the total sales, a denominator, which in our case is the overall sales corrected in this case, this one. And then you can specify an alternate result. In my case, I just skip that. I close the parenthesis, I press enter, and here we go. And let's actually tick the percentage immediately, just to make sure that we got two decimal numbers and the percentage symbol. And now if we take a table again, go with our percentage of total corrected, click this option, then we can see here we got different values from this one. And again, in total, they add up to 100%. And the same is true, of course, if you use Europe here. If I tick on Europe, then this would also work in here, right? And also if you apply additional filters from outside, from other visuals, they would also get taken into account. And this will always add up to 100%. The all, on the other hand, this one will ignoring all the filters coming from the orders table. If it's internally, so from the visual itself, in this case, so this external filter context, or it's coming from an external filter context, which is applied outside. It also gets ignored, as you can see here. Okay? So that's it for this video about all and ALLSELECTED and how you can use them in combination with the calculate function. So thanks a lot for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.